I should have never posted that review. I realized it the exact moment I read the developer's reply, and my heart stopped for a second. Because that response mentioned something I had never written, never told anyone, something I wasn't even consciously remembering. The notification arrived at 2:13 a.m. I shouldn't have been awake. I shouldn't have been checking my phone. But insomnia had been clinging to me for weeks, like a silent shadow breathing down my neck. The screen lit up my dark bedroom with that cold glow that makes everything feel emptier than it really is. "Reply to your review," the notification said. I sighed, exhausted. It was just a meditation app, nothing important. Or at least, that's what I thought. I had downloaded the app 3 months earlier, when anxiety started creeping into my life without warning. It wasn't dramatic, no visible panic attacks, just a constant feeling, like something inside my mind was waiting for the perfect moment to break. The app promised something simple, deep calm based on personalized emotional patterns. It sounded ridiculous, but it worked, at least in the beginning. Everything changed a week before I wrote the review. The app started glitching. It froze during sessions. It repeated relaxation phrases out of context. One night, it even played an incomplete audio track that ended abruptly with an uncomfortable silence, too human to be a technical error. I tried to ignore it, until one night during a guided session, it said something that made me open my eyes instantly. "Breathe, like you did that night." The audio cut off. I remember lying there, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself it was just a coincidence. Just that. A poorly programmed coincidence. 2 days later, I wrote the review. Nothing special. Nothing aggressive. Just a standard complaint about technical failures and user experience. Or at least, that's what I thought. I remember exactly how I wrote it. I was sitting in my living room, the TV on mute, letting the words come out without analyzing them too much. I wrote about how the app created anxiety instead of calming it. I described a feeling of pressure in my chest. I mentioned that some phrases felt too personal. I even used a line that sounded clever at the time. "Sometimes it feels like the app knows memories I don't even want to remember." Posted it. And strangely, I felt relieved. Like releasing that complaint had freed something deeper than simple frustration. Then, I forgot about it. Until that night. I unlocked my phone and opened the notification. The developer's response appeared on the screen. It was long. Too long for a standard reply. It started with normal appreciation until I reached the second paragraph. That's when everything changed. "Thank you for sharing how you felt during nighttime sessions. Memories connected to breathing patterns can sometimes resurface when the brain tries to process unresolved experiences." I frowned. That wasn't strange. Yet, I kept reading. "It is common for users who experienced intense events related to rain sounds and dark rooms to feel discomfort during certain guided audios." My throat went dry. I had never mentioned rain. I had never mentioned dark rooms. I had never mentioned anything like that. My fingers started feeling cold as I scrolled down. The last paragraph took the air out of my lungs. "If you decide to continue using the app, we recommend avoiding the session titled Submerged Memories. We understand this type of exercise may be especially sensitive for users who experience situations involving water." My phone slipped slightly in my hands. I felt a pressure in my chest. Old, familiar, buried. I had never written about water. Never. I reread my review. Once. Twice. 3 times. There was no reference. None. I tried to convince myself it was automated marketing. Algorithms. Generic responses. But something inside me started shifting, like a forgotten file someone had just opened without permission. I closed the app, turned off the screen, and stared at my dark reflection on the glass of my phone. For several minutes, the silence in the house started feeling heavy. I could hear the ticking of the kitchen clock, the distant hum of the refrigerator, even my own breathing too loud for such a quiet space. Then my phone vibrated again. Private message. From the app. I didn't even know apps could send direct messages. I opened the conversation with slightly trembling hands. There was only one line written. No greeting. No signature. No context. Do you still avoid remembering what happened that night? The air got stuck in my lungs. I felt my mind trying to push that message into immediate denial, like refusing to see it could make it disappear. But my body reacted before my thoughts could. My pulse accelerated. My hands started sweating, and a distant echo, barely audible, began hitting inside my memory. A sound. Water moving. Darkness. A name I couldn't fully hear. I placed the phone on the table. I stood up without realizing it and walked toward the hallway, guided by a feeling I couldn't explain. My steps were slow, automatic, like someone else was remembering for me. I opened the study closet. In the back, behind old folders and forgotten boxes, there was something I hadn't touched in years. A gray box, covered in dust. My chest tightened as I pulled it out. I placed it on the desk. For several seconds, I just stared at it, fighting an instinct screaming at me to leave it exactly where it was. But the message kept repeating in my mind. Do you still avoid remembering what happened that night? I swallowed hard and opened the box. Inside were old documents, photographs, and a yellowed envelope folded by time. I opened it slowly. An old consent contract fell onto the desk. It was a document authorizing participation in psychological testing related to auditory stimulation and emotional response. My name was signed on the last page. Below my signature appeared the name of the company responsible for the project. A chill ran down my spine when I read the name of the lead developer. It was the same name listed as the creator of the meditation app. But that wasn't what made the air disappear from the room. What froze me completely was the photograph attached to the contract. A group picture of the testing team. And among all those people, there was someone I recognized instantly. Someone who should never be connected to that app. Someone I believed I had lost, the night my mind refused to remember. My phone vibrated again on the table. I didn't need to look to know it was another message. But I did, because deep down, I already knew something from my past had just woken up. The screen showed a new notification. Hello again. I knew sooner or later you would open that box. The sender's name appeared below the message, and when I read it, I felt the ground disappear beneath my feet. Because that name, it was impossible that it was writing to me. The name that appeared on the screen belonged to someone I had watched disappear. Not metaphorically, not emotionally. Disappear for real. My pulse pounded in my ears as I reread the sender's name over and over, waiting for it to change, waiting for the phone to correct itself, waiting for reality to make sense again. But the name remained there. Clara. The air inside the room grew heavier, like every memory was trying to escape at once, and my mind didn't know which one to suppress first. My hands trembled as I opened the full message. I knew sooner or later you would write something that would make us meet again. I swallowed. The reflection on my screen showed a face I barely recognized. There was fear, but also something deeper, something that had been buried under layers of denial for years. I replied before I could stop myself. Who is this? The message was marked as read instantly. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then the reply came. You know who I am. You just chose to forget. My stomach tightened. A sharp impact hit my memory, trying to force itself open, but it felt like watching a broken film. Fragmented images, distorted sounds, water moving, someone screaming my name, lights reflecting on a dark surface. I squeezed my eyes shut. I didn't want to see more. The phone vibrated again. An audio file. Duration, 0:47 seconds. I stared at it for several minutes. Part of me wanted to delete it without listening. Another part, quieter, more honest, knew that audio had been waiting years to be played. I pressed play. At first, there was only breathing. Then, the sound of heavy rain. Then, a voice. We shouldn't have come inside. The water is rising too fast. The world froze. It was her voice. Not an imitation. Not a distorted memory. Exactly how she sounded that night. The audio continued. If something happens, promise me you won't forget. Promise me you won't pretend this never happened. The audio cut off abruptly. The room fell into a silence so deep I could hear my own heartbeat echoing unevenly inside my chest. I leaned back in my chair. My mind started rebuilding images without permission. An abandoned cabin. An unexpected storm. The sound of a river swelling beyond control. The feeling that everything was slipping away. And then, that moment. The moment my memory had always erased just before completing itself. The phone vibrated again. Another message. The application doesn't just meditate with you. The application remembers with you. A cold chill crawled down my spine. I opened the app for the first time since that night. The home screen had changed. There was a new section I had never seen before. Personal emotional reconstruction. Below it, a warning in small letters. Available only for users with incomplete emotional patterns. My finger trembled before tapping it. A completely different interface opened. No peaceful landscapes, no calming music, just a dark background and a single blinking line of text. Emotional record detected. 8 years, 4 months, 17 days. The air left my lungs. 8 years. Exactly the amount of time that had passed since that night. The screen continued loading. Fragments of text appeared. Incomplete phrases, biometric data, archived session logs I didn't remember authorizing. My name appeared repeatedly inside stored digital files. Then I saw something that made my chest tighten painfully. Pilot testing record. Date, months before the accident. Participants, 2. Me. And Clara. My hands began sweating. Memories started connecting. Too fast. Too violently. I remembered how we met in an experimental university program. I remembered we both agreed to participate in studies about emotional memory and auditory response. I remembered the project was suddenly canceled after an external incident. I had always believed the project ended for administrative reasons. I had always believed the storm was an isolated accident. I had always believed Clara simply left after everything happened. The phone vibrated again. A new message inside the app. We never finished the last session. The cursor blinked below the message, like it was waiting for me to answer. My breathing became shorter. Where are you? I typed. Several seconds passed. Then the reply arrived. Closer than you think. A new file appeared automatically on the screen. Title, Final Session, Full Reconstruction. Below it, a warning written in red. Once started, it cannot be stopped until memory completion. My mind screamed at me to close the app, to turn off the phone, to continue living the way I had for 8 years. But something inside me, Something locked away for far too long wanted the truth. Before I could decide, the screen changed by itself. The session started. The room filled with immersive sound. Rain hammering against wood. Wind pushing through broken windows. Water slowly leaking inside. My breathing started synchronizing with the audio without my control. Then the voice spoke. "You have to decide now." My eyes snapped open. That sentence wasn't part of the previous audio. It was new. The app began displaying images generated from emotional records. A digital recreation of the cabin. The river rising. Clara staring at me, waiting for something. Waiting for a decision. The sound of rushing water filled my ears. My chest began hurting with an old, buried, untouched pressure. Then the voice spoke again. "Only one of us can get out before the water blocks the door." The air vanished. My hands started shaking violently. The screen displayed two silhouettes standing in front of a narrow exit. Two figures trying to escape. Two possible decisions. The system displayed a final message. "Incomplete record detected. Select who exited first." The cursor blinked. Waiting. Like my entire life had been leading toward the moment my memory erased, but my guilt never forgot. Then the phone played one last audio fragment that did not belong to any previous session. A voice, broken, barely whispering. "It wasn't the water that separated us. It was your decision." A new notification appeared on the screen. "Are you ready to remember what you did?" I didn't respond. Couldn't. The cursor blinked in front of me like a clock counting down the time I had left to keep hiding. "Are you ready to remember what you did?" The sound of rain continued filling the room, blending with my uneven breathing. My chest felt tight, like the past had physically returned just to sit on my lungs. I tried closing the app. It didn't respond. I tried turning off my phone. The screen turned back on by itself. Memory cannot be closed manually. My hands started shaking. The images generated by the application began becoming sharper, more detailed, dangerously real. The cabin appeared in front of me with details only someone who had been there could recognize. The damp smell of old wood, the sound of water dripping from the ceiling, the flickering flashlight lying on the table, and the water slowly crawling under the door. And Clara, soaked, terrified, looking at me with a mixture of fear and trust. The reconstruction moved forward on its own. The river had risen too fast. The storm had turned the trail into an impossible path of mud and darkness. I remembered how we tried to stay calm, how we checked the windows, how we convinced ourselves someone would come looking for us. No one came. The water kept rising. First our ankles, then our knees, then panic. The app replayed the exact moment my memory had always shut down. The back door, the only exit. It was blocked by logs dragged by the current, except for a narrow opening that allowed only one person to pass at a time. The reconstruction froze. The message appeared again. Select who exited first. My vision blurred. My hands were sweating so badly I almost dropped the phone. For 8 years I had convinced myself the storm separated us, that the river forced everything, that no one had been responsible. But the system kept showing the incomplete record, waiting for me to finish it. The audio began playing again. But this time, it wasn't Clara speaking. It was my own voice. "I'll go first to check if the path is clear." A violent shock exploded inside my chest. The memory finally broke open. I hadn't gone first to check the path. I went first because I was afraid. I went first because the water kept rising, and because in that instant my survival instinct spoke louder than my conscience. I remembered crawling through the opening. I remembered the current pushing me outside. I remembered struggling to stay on my feet while yelling that I would help her from outside. I remembered the log that held the opening shifting, sealing the exit. And then, I remembered something my mind had erased for years. I didn't go back. Tears began falling uncontrollably. I didn't go back. I ran. I ran looking for help. I ran telling myself I would return with someone else. But when I came back, hours later, the cabin was gone. Only fragments of wood floated on the water, and a silence that followed me for 8 years. The phone vibrated softly. A new message appeared. It wasn't your fear that broke you. It was the silence that followed. My breathing became unstable. "Clara, is that you?" I whispered without realizing. The screen remained silent for several endless seconds. Then the reply appeared. "No, I am what remained of us inside the system." The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. The application began displaying archived files from the old university project. Voice logs, emotional testing data, artificial intelligence models designed to reconstruct traumatic memories using linguistic patterns and shared emotional records. Clara had continued working on the project after the accident. She had trained the system using her emotional recordings, and mine. The final system update had been uploaded months before her permanent disappearance. One last message appeared between the files. "If he ever tries to forget completely, help him remember so he can forgive himself." My tears blurred the screen. For years, I believed I was running from that memory to survive. But the truth was, I was running because I didn't know how to live with what I had done. The app automatically opened the last session. This time, it didn't show the storm. It showed what came after. Me, sitting alone in a police station, unable to explain what really happened, choosing vague words, allowing everyone to assume it had only been a natural disaster, allowing guilt to be buried without a name. The system displayed a final interactive message. "Complete the emotional record. Describe what truly happened." My fingers trembled above the virtual keyboard. For years, I avoided saying it out loud. But that night, I typed everything. The fear, the decision, the guilt, the escape, the silence. When I finished, I pressed send. The screen went black for several seconds. Then one final message appeared. "Record completed. Emotional reconstruction process finalized." The rain in the audio slowly faded. The river sound turned into a distant whisper. And for the first time in 8 years, silence no longer felt like punishment. I thought everything was over. But the app displayed one final notification. A new update. New feature added. Unresolved memory confrontation. Pilot program. Description. Based on an anonymous review that helped complete a lost emotional record. I stared at the screen for several seconds. My complaint, my trivial review, had helped finish the project Clara never got to complete. The phone vibrated one last time. A final automatic message appeared in the center of the screen. "Anonymity does not hide who you are. It only delays the moment you must face it." I turned off the phone. The house remained silent. But this time, it wasn't an empty silence. It was a silence that, for the first time, allowed me to breathe. That same week, I spoke to the people I had avoided for years. I told the complete truth. No excuses, no softened versions. Not everyone forgave me. Not everyone understood. But something inside me finally stopped hiding. Today, I still use meditation apps. But every time I write a review, every time I leave a comment, every time I think a screen protects me, I remember something I learned too late. On the internet, we never leave only opinions. We leave fragments of our story. fragments that, sooner or later, always find their way back to us. Thought balloon final reflection. Sometimes we believe anonymity protects us. But the truth is, it only gives us time to prepare for the day our own words force us to face what we tried to bury. Because online, just like in memory, nothing truly disappears. It only waits to be remembered.